Welcome to Binge Breakthrough, the podcast designed to help you finally break through the barriers that keep you stuck, feeling out of control around food. I'm Master Certified Coach Jane Pilger, and I want you to know that no matter how long you've been struggling or what you've tried, food freedom is possible, and I'm here to show you how. After years of therapy, eating disorders treatment, restrictive diets, and reading all the books, I was still stuck in the on-again, off-again cycle of restricting and binging until I was able to see it all from a new perspective that changed everything. Each week, I will share the strategies, tools, and mindset that allowed me to overcome my decades-long battle with binge eating. Your journey to body trust starts now. Let's dive in. Hello, trusted listener. Welcome to Binge Breakthrough. I consider you a trusted listener because I trust that you are here for a reason. I trust that you are going to hear something today that is insightful and impactful on your journey with food. So today is a very special day in that we are celebrating 100 podcast episodes here on the podcast. I am really proud of this. I don't think I ever had any doubt that I would get to 100 episodes. I certainly never started this podcast and thought, oh, well, we'll see if it works or I'll try it out. I really knew I was going to do this and I was committed to this for the long haul. But when you do something over and over, week after week, sometimes it just adds up. The things that we do week after week add up, no matter what they are. And podcasting is no different. So I wanted to take a moment and take this time and this episode to really celebrate 100 episodes, because one of the things that I work on so much with my clients is the power and the importance of acknowledging and celebrating your progress. No matter what the progress is, if we're talking about very small incremental progress or we're talking about big progress, it all matters. And this is progress that I want to celebrate, and I want to invite you to join me in the celebration. So here's what we're going to do. I've got several ideas of how I want to celebrate 100 episodes, and it actually is going to extend beyond this one episode. We are going to celebrate together for the entire month of October 2024. Now, I've got several ideas and several things planned, and in doing so, I want to make sure that this isn't just a celebration, that what we do continues to provide you with help, to provide you with support as you work on cultivating your own peaceful relationship with food. As I was preparing for this podcast, I found a statistic that kind of surprised me. I guess it really did surprise me. Here's the statistic. Now, I want to say I did not go and verify this statistic. So I am definitely taking I found it on the internet, so it must be true, which I acknowledge this may not be true, but here is the statistic I found. Half of all podcasts have less than 14 episodes. Wow. Half of them, half of the podcasts out there have less than 14 episodes. So to get to 100, it's kind of a big deal. So we're going to make it a big deal, and I am going to continue to provide you with support along the way. Now, here's what we're going to do. I'm not usually driven by numbers, but for this episode, I really have been kind of motivated to look at numbers and to kind of turn this celebration for the month of October into some a numbers-based theme. So here's what we're going to do to celebrate 100 episodes over the month of October of 2024. So all of the episodes in this month are going to have a top 10 theme. You're going to hear more about it as the month goes on, but I've got several ideas of some top 10 things that I want to bring to you that will hopefully provide you some help and some support. I generally am not a huge fan of, the top 5 things or the top 3 things, but I am going to do top 10 this month because it sounds fun. So that's what we're going to do. And today we are going to review the top 10 episodes overall of this podcast. I've gone back, I've looked at the details and the data, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. Now, I encourage you to continue listening to the episode. At the end, I'm going to tell you about a giveaway that I'm going to be doing in the month. If you happen to be listening to this episode in the month of October 2024, you can be eligible to enter into a giveaway for 2 $100 gift cards. Yes, that's right. $100 of a gift card could be yours. In fact, it's possible you could even win both. There are actually 2 different ways to earn the gift card. And I think somebody could win twice if they had good luck. I guess that it will be absolutely random. So keep listening so you can hear about the giveaway. But here's what I want to do. I want to dive in and tell you about the top 10 episodes. So here's what I did to prepare for this podcast. I went into Apple Podcasts. It's just easier there to kind of go through some analytics. And I searched by the number of plays, the overall number of plays for the episode. And I went through and I thought, okay, let's just look at the top 10 episodes. Now, if you've been listening to this podcast for a long time, or if you've been with me from the beginning, you might know that I started this podcast. The very first episode of this podcast is my story. It's called My Binge Breakthrough Story, where I share my own story. And this remains number 1 of the most listened to episodes. Now, what's fascinating is that the top 14 episodes, the very first 14 episodes that I recorded remain some of the most played episodes. And that doesn't surprise me because when I started this podcast, I was very intentional about how I did it. So the very first episode, it's my binge breakthrough story. Then it goes into how do I stop binge eating? And then why do I binge and how do I stop? Were the next 2 episodes where I went over the 8 reasons why you binge and the 8 solutions. And then the next 8 episodes after that were a deeper dive into each of the reasons and each of the solutions. All of those episodes continue to be some of the most played episodes. So if you have found me later on and you didn't start from the beginning, you haven't listened to my story, you haven't listened to the episodes on why do I binge, how do I stop, and the deep dive into each of the 8 reasons and their corresponding solutions, I highly recommend that you go back and check those out. There is a reason that those are some of the most listened to episodes. They're very powerful and very impactful. So I don't want to just say, oh, the top 10 episodes are the first 10. There you go. That's fun. Okay, great. Yes, they are some of the top episodes. So beyond those, what I want to do is dive into the next 10 episodes beyond those that have a lot of plays. So the first one is, why would I do something that makes me feel awful? Here's the thing that I found very interesting as I went through and I looked at the statistics on this episode. This episode is typically listened to 2 times. So this means that this is an episode that people are going back and listening to again. This is also likely a question that you have asked yourself. It is a question I have asked myself. I hear so many clients and so many people struggling with food. Why would I do something that makes me feel awful? So if you have ever asked yourself this question, or if you know you listened to this episode a year ago when it came out, but you don't really remember what the answer is, go back and listen to this episode. It clearly has an impact and has people coming back. So why would I do something that makes me feel awful? I will link the episodes that I'm mentioning here. I'm not going to link the first 15 episodes. It's going to be very easy for you to find them. Just scroll all the way back and you will find them. But the next 10 that I'm going to talk about, I will link them in the show notes so that you can easily find them. The next one is all about restriction. This is another one that people are coming back to. Listen multiple times. There are a handful of episodes overall within the podcast in the past 100 episodes about restriction. And restriction is the number one cause of binge eating. So this episode is very powerful, has a lot of great insights and information. If you wonder, is restriction a problem for me? How do I stop restricting? Check out the All About Restriction episode. Another very popular episode is Insights from a Friend. And this is where my best friend and I had a conversation. And what was really impactful, I've heard from a lot of people who listened to this episode and they found it really powerful because they really liked hearing about the real nitty-gritty. What happened, how the journey was. We talked about the process, how it took a while to get me from where I couldn't even reach out. I couldn't even talk to her after a binge. I would send her an emoji via text and then maybe days later be ready to talk to her, to then the place where I could talk to her immediately right after. We kind of went through that. So Insights from a Friend, another powerful episode. Another episode that has received a lot of downloads is I Want to Eat Whatever I Want, Whenever I Want. If this is something that you've thought for yourself and you think you can't eat whatever you want, whenever you want, check out this episode and see what resonates for you. That is another thing I hear from clients a lot. So it's why I wanted to put that episode together. All right, the next one, the 4 pillars of creating peace with food. So in general, in my work, there are really two main things that I talk about. And that is the 8 reasons why we binge and the 8 solutions. So those were covered in those first 11 episodes, really episodes 2 through 11, the 8 reasons. The other component is these 4 pillars, the 4 pillars of creating peace with food. I'm actually in the process right now of editing. I've got the first draft of my book. My upcoming book is done. The first draft is complete. I'm going through the editing process now. And in this book, I'm doing a deep dive into the 4 pillars of creating peace with food. And we talk a lot about these pillars inside my Cultivate group coaching program too. But in the 4 pillars, I introduce this concept. I introduce what the 4 pillars are. So check that out and see if they resonate with you. And if you want more on this, just know the book is coming. And I really do dive deep into all of this in the book that will be available soon. All right, the next episode. Why can't I do what other people can? I loved this episode. And in this episode, I really talk about just the concept of being a highly sensitive person. If you identify with being a highly sensitive person, or maybe other people have said, you're so sensitive, then this episode might be just helpful or supportive for you. Why can't I do what other people can? Check that one out. All right, another powerful episode that receives quite a few downloads, feeling fat. I think anyone listening to this podcast has the experience of feeling fat. In this episode, what I really went through, we had inside Cultivate, we had some discussions. What does it mean to feel fat? I shared some of the insights and the thoughts of some of the folks inside Cultivate. We talked about that, talked about some of my own experiences. And I know this is something that so many people can resonate with. So if feeling fat is something that you experience, check out that podcast and see if you find something in there for you. All right, another one, overeating versus binge eating. What is the difference? I get this question a lot. I don't know if I binge. Do I binge? Am I just overeating? Does it matter? That's why I recorded that podcast episode, to give you the answers. So that is another great one. If you kind of wonder, am I overeating? Am I binge eating? Does it matter? That's a great episode where you can really get the answers to those questions. All right, the next one, how to understand your brain. I love this episode because so often we blame ourselves for what we're doing. We think there must be something wrong with us. We think I must be broken because of the way that I behave around food. And that just simply is not the case. One of the things I love to do is help people understand their brain, understand why you do what you do and how it makes sense. I talk about this quite a bit in the book also, because the more we understand our brain, the more we can work with it. And when we can work with ourselves instead of against ourselves, the game changes completely. So check out that episode. If you kind of find yourself thinking, I'm broken. Why do I do this? I don't understand. How to Understand Your Brain is a great episode to give you a little bit more just understanding, which can help you get out of the shame and judgment cycle. If you've been listening to me for a while, you know shame and judgment are the 50-pound weight on top of the hood of your car. I see binge eating, any eating experience, any experience you have with food that doesn't really line up with the type of eater you want to be. I see that as a light on the dashboard. It doesn't mean you're broken or something's wrong with you. It means we need to get under the hood and see what's really going on. But if we have shame and judgment about what we're doing with food, we can't get under the hood. So understanding our brain allows us to put that shame and judgment off to the side so we can get under the hood and really figure out what's going on. All right, the last episode that it has received a lot of downloads is another favorite, which is called The Power of the Pause. You may be familiar with a very famous quote by Viktor Frankl, who was a Holocaust survivor. He wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And the quote he says, I'm saying this by memory, so I might mess it up a little bit, but it's essentially, he says, in the space between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space, we have the power to choose. So that space that he talks about, the space between stimulus and response, where we have the power to choose, that is the pause. The pause creates space. So I talk about the pause and the power of the pause and how to use the pause in a way that doesn't turn into willpower, which does not work, but you can really use that for you. So the power of the pause is another very powerful episode. So as I was looking through all of these episodes, I thought, wow, okay, those are all great. Then I started looking and I thought, you know what? I'm going to give you 3 bonus episodes that as I look at the numbers, I thought, wow, here are 3 episodes that actually came out pretty recently, and they have received quite a number of downloads, particularly given that they haven't been out that long. I have also had several people come up to me and talk to me about sometimes it's really interesting. I don't really know who is listening to this podcast. Like I said, I don't really dive into the numbers. I don't look at my statistics and my analytics a lot. I just show up every week. I talk about things that either are coming up for me, coming up for my clients, things that people ask about. And sometimes I have somebody reach out, or I see somebody somewhere and they come up to me and they tell me about the impact of the podcast. They tell me about a particular episode that was really impactful or really helped them a lot. And I want to tell you that when I hear that, it really is, it's amazing to me. I am very much able to let that in, let that land, have gratitude for the ability to sit here and record these episodes and have them literally go out around the world and have people who feel so connected to me, so supported by me, and I don't even know about it. So when I do hear about it, it's like, it's really supportive to me. And so I just want to thank you, those who have reached out, whether you have reached out to me in an email, whether you have left a review, whether you have come up to me, if you have seen me somewhere else and said, wow, your podcast or this very specific thing in the podcast, or here's what I learned from you that made a difference. That makes a difference to me. So thank you for that. And if you haven't, no problem. It doesn't mean you need to, but if it's ever on your heart, if you ever feel a nudge to reach out, to leave a review, to ask a question, I really encourage you to do that. One of the things is that connection is key. It really is the key to ending binge eating. Connection in a lot of ways, connection with yourself, connection with other people, connection with people who understand, who, can, whether they've been there or not, but can really be supportive in your own struggles is key. And so you can connect in so many different ways. So I do invite you to connect with me if you ever feel the nudge to do so. All right, here's these additional kind of 3 bonus episodes. Number 1, your binge eating isn't self-sabotage. I've had a lot of people come up to me and be like, wow, I loved that episode. And I go back and I listen to it. So if you have ever thought you're binge eating, you are sabotaging yourself, I really want you to go listen to that episode. Your binge eating isn't self-sabotage. Next one, I thought I had it figured out. This is for anybody who goes through a period of time that's like, oh man, I thought I had my binge eating under control. I went for so long and now I'm back at it. This is an amazing episode for you to really kind of make sense of those times. And then the third one is how to handle overwhelm. There is absolutely a correlation between overwhelm, kind of high anxiety, and challenges with food, whether it's binge eating, whether it's turning to food to kind of try to soothe that anxiety. So that episode also has been receiving quite a few downloads, even though it's really just 1 month old at this point. So those are 3 additional kind of bonus episodes for you. So we have a huge library here for you of so many different episodes, so many different ways for you to get support. And I will continue to bring new episodes to you. I do not plan on stopping this anytime soon. So I love hearing from you. Now, let me tell you about the giveaway. So as I said before, in this month, this 10th month of the year in October, all of the episodes are going to have a top 10 theme. The last week of October, the theme, the podcast episode is going to be about your top 10 questions answered. But guess what? I don't know what your top 10 questions are. I don't even know what your number 1 question is. So how am I going to find out what your questions are? You need to reach out to me to let me know what your questions are. So this is going to come to the giveaway. The giveaway, 2 $100 gift cards. You can be eligible to be entered into the drawing in 2 ways. Number 1, review the podcast. If you review the podcast, take a screenshot so I actually know that you reviewed it. I mean, I have no idea if anybody, who anybody is that reviews the podcast. So just take a screenshot of your review and send it to me. If you are one of the people who has already reviewed the podcast, I know there's plenty of you out there, you can take a screenshot and send that to me too. So you can be eligible if you have already reviewed the podcast. If you have not, anytime in the month of October, review the podcast, take a screenshot and send it to me. You can email me at hello@janepilger.com. Just use the subject line review. Or you can DM me on Facebook or Instagram. I'm at Jane Pilger Coaching in both places. So that's number 1, submit a review. Number 2, submit a question to me. Now the question, this is going to be for your top 10 questions answered episode that's going to be at the end of this month. So you can submit a question in 2 ways. Number 1, via email, hello@janepilger.com. Or you can email me, or you can not email me. You can use a voicemail. You can send me a voicemail through a pretty cool platform called SpeakPipe. I will put a link in the show notes for how you can do it, but it's essentially speakpipe.com/binge breakthrough. You can go there and send me a voicemail. In that voicemail, you can tell me anything that has been impactful about the podcast or ask me a question. In that last week of October, I will answer your top 10 questions. This means I really would love to get your questions in the first half of the month, if at all possible, so that I can get the podcast recorded. But please send me your questions. I want to answer them. So there is going to be one giveaway for the $100 gift card is going to go to somebody who has submitted a review and sent me a screenshot of their review. The other $100 gift card is going to be to somebody who submits a question. All right. So that's how you enter the giveaway. I'm going to draw the winners on Friday, November 1st, 2024, and I will announce their first names only in an early November podcast, just so, and of course, if it's you, you're going to know that you won, but I will announce the first name of the winners just so that you know there really was a winner and whoever that happens to be. And there is no limit. You can absolutely submit for both items. And yeah, if the random number generator happens to generate you as the winner of both, then there you go. It will be random. All right, that is what I have for you today. Thank you for celebrating 100 episodes with me. I would love to hear from you about how the podcast has impacted you. I would love to hear your questions, and I really appreciate your reviews. Here's what the reviews do. They're not to pat me on the back. The reviews help other people find this podcast. If this podcast has been helpful, if it has been supportive to you, think about somebody else who has not heard this podcast, who is in a lot of pain and shame around their eating. I want them to find this podcast too. I want them to find the support and the help and the resources that they need so that they can get out of pain and cultivate peace with food. It is possible, no matter how long it's been. Thank you for joining me. I'll see you next week for next week's top 10 episode as we continue to celebrate through the month. Thank you for listening to Binge Breakthrough. You can find the show notes and any resources mentioned at bingebreakthrough.com. If you like this episode, subscribe to have future episodes delivered to you each Wednesday. And remember, your 5-star rating and review will help others discover these life-changing concepts. See you next week.